2, 1.
Good evening. This is a meeting of the Community Economic Development Committee. It is 6:08 on Monday, October 10th. My name is Jeff Schilling. I'm the chairman, and I have Mrs. Snee to my right and Mr. Pierce to my left. And what we're going to be talking about tonight is a discussion regarding the Planning Commission membership, essentially talking about the number of seats that the Planning Commission has or may have in the future. This is a open forum tonight. We're discussion. There's no pending legislation. A little bit of background. In 2005, the master plan for the City of Troy, according to Mr. Lutz, had talked about possibly looking at adding seats to the Planning Commission. We have a minimum of the state revised code sets a minimum of 7. Where this is where we are at. The city does have the option to add seats, virtually, I guess, as many as we want. But again, there's been obviously some interest in this topic, and so we are here tonight to talk about it. I'm asking those in the audience that would like to talk to us or make a statement regarding this, keep your comments brief. There is no time limit, but we'd ask that you keep your comments brief and on point, and we ask that, if possible, not to repeat what somebody has already stated, and so we can get out of here some reasonable time in the future. Before we get started, ask the committee, is there any questions or comments that either of you would like to make? No questions here. Any staff comments, Mr. Titterington, on this topic?
No, sir. In your packet, you do have a recap of the Planning Commission minutes regarding the member discussion, but that's it. Okay,
thank you. So I think at this time, any other council members like any discussion at this point? Okay. I want to reserve comments as well. I would like at this time to open the floor, and as you approach the podium, we'd like you to state your name and address for the record. And so right now the floor is open to anybody who'd like to talk about this.
These are a petition that has been circulated. And
I'm sorry, Ben, would you
sure.
Give us your name, and absolutely. I know who you are, but just for your record.
Ben Southerly, 5474 East State Route 41, Troy. I serve as the president of the Troy Historic Preservation Alliance and as president of the Overfield Tavern Museum. The documents that I just handed to Mrs. Knight are two groups of documents. One is a petition that has been signed by folks who live, work, or own property in the downtown. And the second document is a kind of outlines the potential what a 9-member planning commission could look like. I will keep my comments as brief as possible, Mr. Schilling, and I appreciate your calling tonight's meeting, and thanks to you and Mrs. Snee for meeting with me to discuss the importance of greater downtown representation on the Troy Planning Commission. This evening we are here to discuss representation of downtown stakeholders on the Troy Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has the final say on most city-level decisions that are within Troy's historic district, which is marked with the orange and blue historic district signs. So the Planning Commission makes decisions about the signage that businesses can put up within the historic district. They sign off on paint colors for buildings within the historic district. They also decide whether buildings can be added onto or demolished. And on average, over the past decade, the Planning Commission approves about 1 demolition per year, some more notorious than others. I reviewed the Planning Commission's scope of work so far this year, and about 3/4 of the Planning Commission's decisions overall, about 3/4 of those decisions involve changes in the historic district. And yet, despite this, downtown interests are not represented on the Planning Commission as it stands today. So currently, the Planning Commission has no members who live downtown or work at downtown businesses. It has no appointees who own property downtown. It has no representation from historic preservation organizations, as is the case in most other Ohio communities surveyed by the City of Troy. It has no architect to help ensure that decisions about downtown buildings are informed. And I guess one of the key questions, I think, for everyone this evening is, how is it that the community that is most affected by 3/4 of the decisions made by the Troy Planning Commission has no meaningful representation on the Troy Planning Commission? That just really doesn't make any sense, and it seems like a situation that needs to be remedied. So during the recent moratorium on demolitions in downtown Troy, the city surveyed other Ohio communities for best practices related to oversight of historic downtowns. And in addition to examining those communities' downtown zoning codes, which you made some updates earlier this year based on that survey and the city's research, the city staff also surveyed those towns about the makeup of the bodies that have oversight of the downtown built environment. I hope you've had a chance to see that survey. If you haven't, we'll make sure that you get that. The survey found overwhelmingly that other Ohio cities have greater representation of downtown stakeholders at the table when decisions are made about their downtowns. This includes people who live, work, or own property downtown, representatives of historic preservation organizations, and people with skill sets relevant to such decisions, such as architects and engineers. In fact, Troy ranked behind all 14 of the other Ohio communities surveyed when it came to representation of downtown interests on the Planning Commission, or whatever equivalent body makes those decisions in other communities. In addition, as Mr. Schilling referenced in his opening comments, the city's own comprehensive plan calls for at least ad hoc downtown representation on the Planning Commission from historic homeowners or a historic neighborhood association. And our question would be, why hasn't that been implemented, or why shouldn't that be implemented? So how could this situation be fixed? Earlier this year, Troy Main Street, Troy Community Works, and the Troy Historic Preservation Alliance collaborated on a series of proposals to advance a culture of stewardship in downtown Troy. We felt it was very important that we took a collaborative approach. And those proposals included some incentives for stewardship and other collaborative projects, and one proposal called for the Troy City Council to authorize adding 2 seats to the Planning Commission to ensure greater representation of downtown interests. So what would a 9-member Planning Commission look like? Well, the mayor, the Public Service and Safety Director, and the City Park Board President would serve on that as they currently do under the Ohio Revised Code. You would also have, in addition to those three residents of the City of Troy. And then our thoughts are that you would have the remaining 3 members would be allotted as follows. You would have an appointee who lives, works, or owns property in downtown Troy. You would have a representative of an organization whose mission includes historic preservation, such as Troy Main Street, Troy Community Works, or THPA. And you would have an architect or professional engineer. And it is worth noting that on the current Planning Commission, there is an engineer who serves on that currently. We believe this simple change just makes common sense. It would transform Troy from an outlier into a leader when it comes to having an inclusive dialogue about decisions that affect our downtown. Before you decide on this issue, we do feel it's important to clarify some of the statements that Mayor Oda made about this topic at a Planning Commission meeting back in July. The current mayor said she is opposed to reinstating a Board of Architectural Review. The fact is that the Troy Historic Preservation Alliance and other organizations have not asked for a BAR to be reinstated. And I would invite you to watch the video, because you will find that is the case. We never asked for that. Rather, we have asked to work within the existing framework and add 2 seats to the Planning Commission. And the current mayor also said downtown Troy is beautiful and property owners take good care of their buildings. And I guess my question is, then why is the mayor opposed to ensuring that downtown property owners have a voice on the planning commission, as is the case in so many other Ohio communities? The current mayor also said she's proud of the work being done by the current planning commission. So just to clarify, this issue is not about the current planning commission members, none of whom were appointed by Mayor Oda. This is not personal, and if it were personal, we would probably advocate for planning commission members to be removed and replaced, and that's not what we're asking for. We're asking for 2 seats to be added. This is about ensuring that the people most affected by the planning commission's decisions are represented at the table when those decisions are made. Throughout this process, in the face of indisputable and overwhelming evidence that the city is an outlier on this issue, despite the fact many people have put a tremendous amount of work into these common sense proposals, we do hear a lot of excuses rather than solutions. So one thing that we've heard is several years ago when Troy increased the size of the council from 7 to 9 members, we've crossed this bridge before, and when we talk about this, we hear the feedback from more than one city representative that this would create an unwieldy situation. And I guess my question tonight would be, how exactly would this be unwieldy? When we asked the city's public service and safety director that question, we were told that the roll call would take too long. And I guess I have to say, the city council found a way to make a 9-member council work. But we're basically being told in so many words that ensuring better downtown representation isn't worth taking a few extra seconds for a roll call vote. That's how that comes across to us. I think there's also a sense, and I think it's an accurate perception, that adding 2 seats to the Detroit Planning Commission would amount to stacking the deck. I don't see how that computes. If you added an appointee representing downtown property owners, business owners, or residents, and you added a second person representing historic preservation interests, that could very well result in 2 people being on opposite ends of a vote. But it's important that both of those perspectives be at the table when important votes are made. Too much is at stake in our historic downtown to allow the status quo to continue. But it will continue unless the Troy City Council takes action and formally provides input on the selection of future Planning Commission members. We have heard elected officials express a desire to wait on this issue, but this issue cannot wait. There will not be an opening for a member of the general public to serve on the Planning Commission at least until the very end of 2023. The next opening in July 2023 will be limited to members of the City Park Board. Even at the end of 2023, it's usually the case that Planning Commission members sign on for an additional 6-year term. In many cases, Planning Commission members continue to serve until they pass away or until they are too infirm to continue to serve. It's not unlike serving on the U.S. Supreme Court. I used to cover the city of Troy as a reporter, and I am speaking from personal experience. If a 7-member Planning Commission continues, what assurances would we have that greater downtown representation would come about? Encouraging the mayor behind the scenes to select members of the downtown community, it's not going to cut it. We need concrete action from our city council. We are asking for the addition of 2 seats, and we'd ask that council members formally express their preference for members of the downtown community to fill those seats. It is true that the current mayor happens to own a property in the downtown historic district, but she is elected to represent all Troy citizens and not look out for the interests solely of downtown property owners. Our city council must play a critical role in ensuring that we are very intentional about ensuring downtown representation on the Planning Commission, not just rely on the fact that somebody happens to be a property owner or somebody happens to be an attorney. My question for the council members on this committee, and I'm about to wrap up, is this. If you're not comfortable with the possibility of adding 2 seats to the Planning Commission, first I would ask you why. What is so problematic about the idea of adding 2 seats? Other communities have more than 7 people on the commissions to make these decisions. What do you find unacceptable that you would be willing to deny people downtown a voice on the Planning Commission? Second, I would ask you, what is your idea? If you don't like the idea of adding 2 seats to the Planning Commission, how would you resolve this? I think all of us in this room would have open ears on that and would be interested to hear your thoughts on that. But we need the council, whatever the answer is, to take concrete action to increase downtown representation on the Troy Planning Commission. We care about this lack of representation. We need to do better in the future. The Planning Commission has oversight of important decisions that affect so many of the people out here: signage decisions, paint color decisions, additions, demolitions. You cannot say that you support property rights and be comfortable with the status quo. Mr. Schilling, Mrs. Snee, and Mr. Pierce, we're hoping you will get the ball rolling to work with us to fix this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Elizabeth Shin, and I live at 221 West Franklin. I moved to Troy in 2015. I chose Troy because I like the charm of the historic district in the downtown. My house is conveniently located to downtown shopping and restaurants, and I walk my dog every morning around the neighborhood, and I see how much effort my neighbors put into maintaining their homes. We are all stewards of these old buildings, and we would like to see them kept up. My house is 142 years old. Hopefully, it will still be here in another 142 years. When I moved here, the previous owner told me about living in the historic overlay district and what that entailed. Otherwise, I would have been totally ignorant of what was going on. I would have been ignorant of the procedures, and I did not receive any information from the city about the ordinances pertaining to my house or who to contact for help or guidance and questions. And I think this is a situation that should be remedied. Having a historian, an architect, or a local owner on the Planning Commission would be a first step in forming a partnership with the neighborhood. The historic nature of the town is what makes this town great. And the owners of the homes and buildings have a vested interest in maintaining that.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Andrea Keller, 405 Southwest Public Square. I'm the Executive Director of Troy Main Street, and I'm here tonight in representation of Troy Main Street. As Ben mentioned, we co-signed on this ask with Troy Historic Preservation Alliance and Troy Community Works, and I'm just here to reiterate our support in the ask for two additional members of the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jules Harris. I live at 170 Riverside Drive. I am a downtown business owner as well as a board member of Troy Community Works. I too come in representation to say that we are in favor of this. And I had a question. So we had a lot of really good questions asked. Do we get no answers? Do we get anything from that tonight? From some of the questions, like for instance, why would this not be a good ask? What would be the negative that you feel that it's bringing?
Thank you for your question. In my own, what I'm here tonight is to listen, basically. I always say it's better to have two ears and one mouth. And,
sure.
And so, number one, I want to listen tonight. And some of the questions that are being proposed, you may take a little bit more time to formulate an answer than maybe what we're interested in providing tonight. But again, we are here to listen. And like I say, this is, at least in my own case, that's what I'm here for. And had promised all of you that you give an opportunity to talk to us. I mean, a lot of times it seems like the council talks to the residents, and it's not the other way, but we're here tonight to listen to you, all of you, and to find out what your reasons are, where you feel that this would be important and vital to the city. And so, again, I'm here to listen. I don't know if Mrs. Snee or Mr. Pierce has any other additional comments on that, but that's basically why I'm here tonight.
I just wasn't sure of how that dialogue worked. I've been, along with a lot of people, learning lots of things. They did this study that we were the last. I'm sure no one in Troy, including you guys, want us to be the last in anything, right? We're always trying to improve and be that better. And so, so I hope that as we move forward, that this is really something that we do look at. We look at this survey. Do any of you know why the bar was stopped in 2000? So it ran from 1960s all the way to the year 2000, and then it was, I guess they just stopped it. Do you know the reason for that?
Understanding is that towards the end of 1999, middle to end of 99, we could not get enough members interested to serve on that board, and so that is the point at the end of 99 into 2000 where it was folded into the Planning Commission.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure you'd find plenty of people today. So thank you very much, and I hope you'll consider this.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else who'd like to talk to us tonight?
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Julie Carter. I live at 17 East Water Street in Troy, and I have worked downtown for the past 5 years and am getting ready to open a new downtown business in the next couple weeks. I live and work downtown. I walk to work every day. I love it here. I do agree that there is a lack of representation as far as the downtown community, business owners, and the people that live and work downtown. And so I'm just here in support of adding some additional seats to that. So thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Can I call on Mr. Kerber?
Good evening.
Good evening. The question I have for you is that if council decided to expand the planning commission seats, and again, it seems like a lot of people in the room tonight are interested in putting people that have particular skill sets in those seats. Are there any restrictions or I mean, what type of, can you describe a scenario? How would we do that?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I was wanting to come forward and speak on a few issues in that regard because
okay.
I'm sure it's sort of when everybody became a council member, it was explained that Troy is a statutory city. And sometimes with that, there are not, other communities have a charter that gives them a little more flexibility how they operate, but the city of Troy is a statutory city, so we have to follow the state procedure in that regard. And I certainly, the committee's aware, or the Preservation Alliance is aware that the Ohio Revised Code does provide that you can add citizen members to the Planning Commission. And you can actually add an additional 2, up to 10 additional on top of that. However, the revised code at 71301 establishes that the mayor makes that selection for those citizen members, and it doesn't put any constraints on the mayor's discretion in that regard. So as far as saying that somebody has to be an architect or a downtown member, that's really would represent a separation of power issue that would be violative of what the revised code, it vests with the mayor the ability to make those appointments. So in summary, the city council certainly consider adding members, but as far as putting restrictions or on the type of members, we have to go by the revised code.
And the revised code, in your opinion, does not provide for guidance on that.
Well, it talks about citizen members, citizens of the
Community.
Yes.
But
But it does not talk about the qualifications. So
okay.
it specifically mentions that the Service and Safety Director, the mayor, the president of the park board are members. That cannot be changed.
Right.
Otherwise, it's 2 citizen members and then 2 members of the public who don't have to be citizens. That's the present composition. The revised code says that you can add the citizen members, you can add 2 up to 10 additional citizen members.
When you talk about citizens, member, you're talking about somebody that actually resides within the city limits of Troy.
That is correct.
Okay. That answered my question then. Okay, thank you.
May I ask an additional, I just want to make sure I understood you. Anyone other than the 3 members defined by the ORC has to be a resident of the city of Troy?
As of right now, there has to be 2 citizen members. The other 2 says members of the public that have to reside within the county. But, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure of the present composition. If the 4 members that are not the Service and Safety Director, the mayor, and the president, I am not sure of their residency off the top of my head. But there has to be 2 citizen members. The 2 additional can be citizens of the city, but it's not necessary. To add to the membership, the revised code specifically says that any new members, anywhere from 2 to 10, must be citizen members.
Thank you.
Okay. Questions?
I know who you are. Most of us know who you
Grant
are.
Kerber, I'm the City of Troy's law director.
Thank you.
Okay. Council people have any questions for Mr. Kerber?
If I may, again, just clarification on the 2 to 10. That is an option for the mayor?
No, that's city council by resolution. The mayor does not determine whether or not to expand the size of the city, the planning commission. It's city council makes that decision. Okay. In that regard.
That's where I was clear on that.
But may I ask another question?
Yeah, the mayor makes the appointments.
And to clarify again, you're saying that even if we added numbers, we cannot dictate who those citizen members are, or even their occupation, expertise, anything they're bringing to that committee.
And I suspect with the survey, what happened is a lot of these other, there are, I would say the grand majority of cities, at least within the state of Ohio, are charter communities, and they have, they don't necessarily have to follow 71301.
And a charter community could choose to define their own architectural review board, planning commission membership, however they chose within their charter. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And Mr. Southerly has a question or comment. I don't know.
Comment and a question. Well, couple things to mention. First of all, when the survey was done of other Ohio communities, it is true that the majority of those are charter governments. However, between the city survey and the historical groups did their own survey, there were 4 other statutory governments that were surveyed, and I'd like to share with you what their expectations are for planning commission members. So Alliance is the first one, and they say all commission, this is a statutory city, all commission members should have a demonstrated special interest, experience, or knowledge in history, architecture, or related disciplines. At least 2 of the members shall have the background of architect, archaeologist, landscape architect, historian, planner, realtor, or related field. Athens in Southeast Ohio is the second city. They specify you should seek at least 2 members with backgrounds in architecture or history. Lancaster was the third city in Central Ohio. Members must own property or live within the historic district. Zanesville is the fourth. Representative who lives, works, or owns property in each of the city's 3 historic districts. A council member, an architect, engineer, or historian, 2 at-large members. I bring this up because there are 4 other statutory communities in Ohio that apparently have found a way to do this, and I would encourage Troy to be the 5th. I also would just like to point out that the council has the authority to sign off on the members that the mayor selects for the planning commission. So you have more power than you give yourselves credit for.
Do we have any other comments from the audience tonight? Okay. Does any of the committee want to make any comments or questions to any of the speakers?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Mr. Sullivan, could I, if I could, maybe you're sort of the spokesman of this group, could I ask you a couple of questions, please? Sure. If you'd be willing to. Okay.
Yes.
As far as the current planning commission, we all know that the mayor, our mayors have appointed members to the planning commission, and there's no restrictions on who the mayor can appoint. Is that correct? So, I mean, other than what Mr. Kerber has already outlined.
So it seems to me that the council could state formally a preference for what they would like to see at the very least.
Okay, but the mayor can essentially appoint anybody they want. Would that be a fair statement?
Not well, assuming the council signs off on it.
Right, right. Oh, okay. And again, when we look at our the makeup of the planning commission, we have, I think we have 7 dedicated people. They commit to 6 years. That's 140 some meetings, potential meetings, Troy, I don't think is that big of a community that they would lose sight of I think we'd be selling them short to assume that they could lose sight of the importance of our downtown. In other words, that I guess my question is it to have somebody that owns a business or resides downtown, to be part of the board. How does that be different than, say, somebody who lives out in my neighborhood, Stonebridge Estates or Culberson Heights or anywhere else? Troy isn't that big that you don't. Is it? That if somebody would actually lose sight of how important the downtown is.
So I don't think anyone would question that no matter where you live in Troy, that you probably love downtown Troy. How could you not love downtown Troy?
Exactly.
We all love downtown Troy. That's really not the issue here. The issue here is you don't know what you don't know. You may, just by virtue of owning property downtown, by virtue of living downtown, by virtue of working downtown, you are familiar, you have your own personal experiences, and you're in that environment where you're going to pick up on information that I think you can bring to the table when the Planning Commission makes decisions, and it will help to make for a more informed decision for the group. My question would be, why do all these other communities value that? It's because people have valuable experiences based on living, working, or owning property downtown, or having a historic preservation background, or being an architect. It's valuable to have that. And we're not proposing that anybody who may live out in Stowbridge Meadows step down from the Planning Commission. We're fine with them continuing to serve. But why not have that representation on the Planning Commission?
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your comments on that. So.
Yep. May I ask one further question?
Go right ahead.
Mr. Kerber, if he can.
Mr. Kerber.
Could I ask one further question?
Sure.
Is the 6-year term defined in the code as required?
Yes.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
the 6-year is.
Yeah, and it's staggered. It also, when it was really set up, they had to stagger the seats, and that's why in this case, Mayor Ode has not had an opportunity to appoint anybody onto the Planning Commission.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. Question is, where do we go from here? Any comments on that? I mean,
I'm not sure if I'm prepared to say where we go from here, since tonight's meeting was set up as an open forum meeting to listen.
okay, fair enough.
I've said before, and I'll restate, I said to Mr. Southerly, I'm not sure that I'm prepared to add 2 members to the Planning Commission. I think I do recognize the importance, and I would hope the mayor recognized the importance of having members on the Planning Commission that represent the interests that have been talked about, presented, but I'm not sure I can agree with adding members to the commission, at least not right now.
Okay.
I'm not prepared yet either to do so.
Again, I'd like to thank everybody for attending tonight. It is important to discuss this. And again, if you don't feel comfortable in coming to the microphone, I'm speaking for council that we are more than willing to talk to you on a one-to-one basis, and there's, you can email us or call us or however you want to get in contact with us, and we'd be happy to discuss this further. And I think again, we're going to take a look at this thing and see what, see what we can look at, I guess, is the only thing I can tell you tonight. But again, I appreciate everybody's coming, and I don't think there's anything else before the committee tonight. So I think we are adjourned. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.